well, it might work for one person, but not the next.
Sure.
It might be that you need some like sort of angry self-talk and you have to really unpick that. Fine, great. It might be that you need to take a bit of a leaf out of the mindfulness book, present moment, non-judgmental thoughts, even like self-compassionate focused therapy, which a lot of athletes would struggle with. Like, again, throw the ego in there and the winning and outcomes and things like that. The thought of saying to yourself, I'm okay, and like a sort of soothing, gentler approach seems like really weird and goes against that, but actually it can be massively helpful.
Welcome to the Elev8 podcast. I'm your host and coach, Tyler Johnson. Thank you for tuning in. If you are a return listener, I'd be grateful for your rating or review. And if you dig this episode, give us a like or share. And now, whether you've tuned in to elevate your mindset, your game, or just your day, you are in the right place. My guest this episode is a sports psychologist who helps athletes, coaches, and teams of all levels, from the motivated and talented youngster up to the experienced professional who competes internationally. He supports them by developing their mental toughness using evidence-based tools from sport and organizational psychology, along with his personal insights and experiences. He is also the host of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast. Check it out. It's linked up here. Welcome to the Elev8 podcast from across the Atlantic in the UK, Mr. David Charlton. It's morning here. It's afternoon there. How are you this afternoon?
Yeah, I'm very good. Yeah, thanks, Tyler. And yeah, big thank you for inviting me onto the show as well. Really looking forward to this.
Yeah, excited to have you on. I know one of the things with mental performance coaches and a lot of people we have on the podcast is the journey to how they got there. And I know you have a unique one that I admire. And could you tell us a little bit about how you got into the field of sports psychology and what you do now?
Yeah, so, golf, I suppose, would have been my sport as a youngster. I was, quite talented, knocked out, and the dream was to go to a professional level, but I wasn't talented enough for that. Technically, perhaps, yeah, but also psychologically, confidence was a big problem for me. I was very shy, and I think now that I recognize when I look at my clients that I support, especially youngsters, they get caught up in looking over their shoulder a lot and mind reading coaches, rivals, parents. And that was me, that child who was very self-conscious and worried so much about other people and then tried to be perfect. And it just, it's a recipe for...
Me too. I can relate to that as a youth.
Yeah, recipe for, well, not disaster, but yeah, you're always going to be frustrated. So yeah, I'm highly motivated and was in those days putting countless hours. I would practice golf until my hands bled and tried every which way, and it didn't happen. So I then... football or soccer in the States, that was a big interest. I did some coaching qualifications there in football here. Got into that a little bit. But then at that time I was working in the travel industry. That was really my first career. And I wasn't able to combine both. So financially, that was the thing that drove me at the time. I'm trying to think, ended up buying a house and getting a mortgage. So the travel paid the money, sure. Which became a passion. And yeah, sadly though, how I actually ended up getting into sports psychology came through a really testing period in my life, to say the least. Yeah. So yeah, if you go back to Oh yeah, I can't believe the time. Actually, 15 years ago, so 2007, my wife got diagnosed with cancer, and at that point, I took about 4 months off work and like had a real good think about what I suppose achieved in my life, where I was going, and really at that point when she was ill, I made the decision, right, this is what I want to do career-wise as a sports psychologist, because had always been interested in the mental side. She died 15 months later, and about another 6-7 months after that, I got made redundant from my job because it was the recession taking place. And it was a really, really difficult time at that point, to say the least. But I was faced with a decision. Well, right, do you stick or do you twist? And I decided, right, nope. Look, you've been thinking about this for the last 18 months or 12 months or so. If you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. So, yeah, in my early 30s, that's what I did. I got the process of going back to school, if you like. Got a degree in psychology, master's degree, and then you go through a supervised practice period here to get chartered as a sports psychologist. So yeah, it took us up to about 40, I think, seven years, whilst trying to pay for a mortgage and etc. So it was interesting.
Yeah, I think obviously a challenging time, and the courage it takes just to pivot or twist, as you put it, in our career. I think, as part of my journey, I think kind of did that early, and, worked in a different angle in sports, and really was motivated and pushed to this, and faced some of those same questions in different circumstances as you. And I think that's what I admire, that this is got to go do it. And I admire that about you. You have a podcast that's pretty cool. We'll have it linked up here as well. It is called the Demystifying Mental Toughness Podcast. What about mental toughness needs demystifying, David?
Right. Okay. Well, firstly, it's not a male macho term. So there's plenty of ladies out there who are a lot mentally tougher than a lot of men. Yeah. So not a macho thing. It is possible to be a kind, caring, empathetic person and be mentally tough. Yeah. It's not just a sporting tool, if you like, or a phrase. It's, the evidence tells you in the literature around sports psychology that it's, valuable in health, education, business. It's a big thing. And I suppose lastly, the other one is, a lot of people think, to be mentally tough, it's about effort, grinding, and just digging in sort of thing. But it's a lot more complex than that.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's similar thought on, we don't need mental toughness to be tough. We need mental toughness because life is tough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The road from A to B is not smooth. So
whether it's, sports and life, all the things that we get faced with. Along the journey in the podcast, on your guests, is there some guests or moments or anything that kind of stick out as, man, that really changed my thinking, or something I continued to share that I heard on your podcast?
There's probably too many to mention, but I'm going to come at this from a slightly different angle to what people would expect with mental toughness.
Cool.
So if I go back to one of the first podcasts that I did, with a guy called Peter Ramage, who's an ex-Premier League footballer. He's now into coaching. At the time, he was in the States actually coaching. And one of the things he said to me was some advice for young players, or for players in general, is keep that dialogue open with the coach. And one of the big questions he said is, if you don't get selected for a team, ask the coach in a nice way, what is it that I need to do to improve? That was one little thing. in there as well, I also interviewed another professional footballer ex-professional footballer called Jamie Forrester, and it was very similar to the conversation I had with Peter, where we got talking about communication. And in a team sport, yeah, you've got to have all these technical skills, and you've got to be committed, motivated, put the effort in, have confidence. But actually, you've also got to have interpersonal confidence. So you need to be able to assert yourself to the coach, to your teammates. You've got to deal with criticism. So you've got to be able to have awkward conversations with people. Which throws me into another podcast, which with a guy, which I did on that topic, Paul McGee. He's called the Sumo Guy. The Sumo stands for shut up and move on. But basically, yeah, we talked about interpersonal confidence and how you deal with these types of situations and what have you, and like difficult people. And really his advice from I suppose, whether it's an athlete or a coach angle, a sports psychologist, you've always got to be looking to try and put yourself in the shoes of the other person, understand their values, the stresses in their life, recognize that they're human. It's very easy, I suppose, as an athlete to put your coach or some teammates on a pedestal.
Sure.
But if you can try and put that to one side and, like I say, understand the person is a human, they go to the toilet, they brush their teeth, they eat, then you can drop your guard and you can have these sort of conversations a lot easier.
And I think even the further you go along in sports, even to the professional ranks, everyone has a different journey. You might be in the same place now or in the same locker room, but every coach and player has a different journey of how they kind of got there. And learning that, I think, is just like you said in different words, it's just somewhere those true connections can really happen. Yeah,
massively. And I suppose one of the big problems or challenges, if you like, I don't like the word problems, is especially in elite professional sport at the top end, you've got a lot of egos involved, be that the athlete or the player or the coach. So being able to leave that ego out of the dressing room, out of the room is vitally important. But in lots of cases, easier said than done.
For sure. Is there you work with a variety of clients, but is there a mental skill that you love to teach lately, or something that when you get the opportunity, something that gets you excited?
Something that gets me excited. I think I would say actually exploring someone's thoughts. There's a variety of angles you can take this when we're thinking about someone's self-talk. So, a lot of people think, you've got to be really positive and motivational. Well, that might not work for one. Well, it might work for one person, but not the next.
Sure.
It might be that you need some sort of angry self-talk and you have to really unpick that. Fine, great. It might be that, you need to take a bit of a leaf out of the mindfulness book, present moment, non-judgmental thoughts. Even like self-compassionate focused therapy, which a lot of athletes would struggle with. Like, again, throw the ego in there and the winning and outcomes and things like that. The thought of saying to yourself, I'm okay, and like a sort of soothing, gentler approach seems like really weird and goes against that, but actually it can be massively helpful. On that note, something I'll often throw out to an athlete, I'll ask them if they've got a pet, and if they've got a dog, for argument's sake, we will talk about, well, if the dog had a minor accident and it was hobbling around, and there was just you and the dog in the house, what would you do to help and console the dog? Well, so it's straight away, I'll put it on my knee, I'd give it a stroke, I would talk to it in a sort of an empathetic,
Yeah.
kind, caring sort of
Yeah.
manner. Well, do you do that with yourself when you've you've made a mistake in sports? No.
Yeah.
Well, could you imagine doing that? And I'm just really trying to help them understand that actually it's not just what you say; it's also the tone of voice that is important, and that can then refocus you, re-energize you, and get yourself back to the present moment. And as I say, I don't think everybody is very different, so not one method works, and I suppose that's the exciting bit. It's been able then to explore which angle to take it.
I love it. The exploration is fascinating because there isn't cookie cutter solutions when it comes to mental skills and the experiences that athletes get put in. I know one of the things that I saw in doing some research, I think you do some work in is hypnotherapy.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Can you? So I was hypnotized once more, many years ago for entertainment purposes. So I had experienced what it was kind of like, and they made a fool of me in front of my peers in taking advantage of the circumstance. But can you talk a little? I think I feel like we're on a cusp where it's going to become a little bit more normal and a little bit more prevalent. At least athletes, especially in college, and some things I've heard more and more use of it. Can you talk a little bit about what some of the maybe basic goals are, or how you do it to facilitate it? And I'm sure it's different, again, like you said, like each athlete on what the, maybe the process or outcome goals of it. But can you talk about the general sense of what it's trying to accomplish?
Yeah, well, I'll give you like a couple of examples when it comes down to clients, without obviously disclosing names and whatever. So yeah, I alluded a little bit earlier to the self-conscious me when I was younger. So again, a lot of athletes out there are self-conscious. So supposing, let's see, client, right? I'm going to go golf, right? So you got a female client who's self-conscious about the way she looks, self-conscious about a golf swing, etc. So how I'd use hypnosis there would be do a gentle bit of relaxation for a few minutes initially so they drop their guard in effect, and they're nice and in a relaxed state. Then I might do some visualization skills, imagery around that, and what you're trying to achieve. And then when it comes down to the hypnosis, for me, it's like using metaphors in there to help people. So it might be that we would get them like using visualization through the use of a metaphor. It could be like where they see themselves in a circus, for argument's sake, where they are the center of attention, and they're maybe dressed in the wackiest clothes. They've got bright red lipstick on, the full works. So everybody is just like, whoa, what am I looking at here? And you then unconsciously trying to unpick exactly, what it is they go through on the golf course through a different means. And also thrown into the mix with hypnosis, you would use a lot of statements in order to back up what you're trying to achieve. Sure. Another example would be, I'm using a bit of it like an English sport, if you like, but there'll be similarities with baseball. You've got cricket's the sport. Yep. And in cricket, people hurl the ball at the top level, not far off 100 miles an hour at you, and off sometimes at your head.
It's a hard ball.
Yeah, exactly. And it can be rather painful. So it's very easy for the batsman to become very fearful, especially if they've been hurt quite a lot. So again, similarly, I would use the same principles, the relaxation, the imagery, and then statements, and also some metaphors in order to help reduce that that fear ultimately. And yeah, there's so many different angles I would take it, but like
is the kind of the key objective through the therapy to reduce activity in parts of the brain and ignite parts in the other parts of the brain as you go through that? Is that kind of, what the goal of, shifting what we're really using to think, process, subconscious, consciously, is kind of to plant seeds into the unconscious a little bit?
Exactly. Yeah, that's you've hit the nail on the head there, where you say plant seeds. So regardless of mainstream sports psychology tools, you're just trying to shift perspective onto you, and this is what you're doing at an unconscious level.
Yep.
In different ways. You're not telling them to. Well, you mentioned about stage hypnosis. You're not telling them to dance around the stage like a chicken.
Yeah.
You're just gently, well, or at least the way I do it anyway, you're gently prodding to get them to open up and think about the different ways that they could react at an unconscious level.
Sure. So no, in my scenario, they made me dance, and I did not become a better dancer after coming out of the hypnosis. So, different thing going on there for sure. One of the things that I liked, and listeners, you guys can go to www.sport-excellence.co.uk, and you can download this from David as well. But he's got this focused athlete checklist. If you're an athlete listening, great things to go through. If you're a coach, maybe some good discussion points, take some opportunities with your teams to go through. But we're going to go through a few of them, and just wanted David to share why these things are important as competitors and student athletes and coaches. But first one sounds simple. I think we all do it. Sometimes we don't do it the right way, but why is it important to set some goals that we're going after in a season?
Why is that important? Obviously, it's going to focus you. However, there's a right way to set your goals, and there's some not so helpful ways to set your goals too. Often athletes can set that dream big goal, right? I want to win such and such by the end of the season or the end of the year. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, for sure.
They take that box on. I've set my goals, but actually, look, that's just a dream. That's like a New Year's resolution, isn't it? Really, where I'm gonna lose 2 stone in weight, but then need to nail it down as to right. Okay, these stats are going to back up this goal, as in performance statistics, and then look into the process goals. What elements are actually going to help me achieve this goal? So that very quickly is the way.
The next one kind of blends right into, taking those actionable steps is measuring progress. I see measurement as a motivational tool as well. When you can see, what your effort looks like in a different form. Why is measurement important so we can see progress?
Yeah, well, so it's funny actually, because in sports psychology, you can get lumped with the whole notion of that it's not a measurable thing, and that it's all pink and fluffy, but actually you can do that. So if it's I'm going to go football or soccer. It's a big sport that I work in. So if I'm working with a midfielder, let's say an attacking player, one of the things I'll ask them is their passing stats, or if they have any ideas around that. And say it's 50% of the time they find a teammate. But if they were, if they're then able to track that over a period of time and they see, actually, it's gone up to 55% to 60%, and they know they've followed the process goals along the way, as in the key behaviors to drive that, then they're like, actually, what I'm doing here is working, which goes on to drive the confidence and the motivation. Sure. Or vice versa, if the numbers have gone down, then it's, well, actually I need to change my approach here, and try something else, because clearly what I'm doing isn't working. And if you don't track your numbers in some sort of way, even a simple way, the brain's got a negative bias. So if you're like a highly motivated perfectionist athlete, you're just going to keep finishing training sessions, finishing matches, more likely like looking at the negatives, and you'll feel like you're running in treacle, and you're not making any headway.
Yeah, I think it's just Dr. Andrew Huberman out at Stanford that has the Huberman Lab podcast. They were just talking on one of their episodes about, research about how you feel about your workout and how you feel about what you're eating has a lot more to do with it than we probably thought over the years. If you think you're not working out enough, your body's going to behave different. If you think you're not eating enough, or you're eating plentiful, your body's going to react. And so there's some fascinating research there sharing on just how you think about what you're doing. Another one down the list here, fun. My favorite F word in sports, fun. Especially, I mean, from youth to pro athletes, there's got to be an element of it. But, what does that element unlock for us?
Well, let's be honest, even from a young age these days with sport, it's all organized, isn't it? Where, right, at 5 o'clock you rock up, coach has a training session laid on, and you leave at 7 or whatever time it is. And that playful element of sort of exploration and trying different things that you may have done 20 or 30 years ago as a child, in the local streets, that doesn't happen anymore. So I think it's important for coaches to ensure that in their sessions they are factoring in this creative element, this fun factor. Otherwise, kids just don't really. They struggle to. What am I looking for? I'm trying to think of the words here. They struggle to find the zone, if you like. They don't have any experience of finding it. It's all like instructional. I must do A and B to make C. And again, they're looking over their shoulders an awful lot as to, well, I need to please the coach because he said or she said I do that. And self-exploration, which links into fun, is vital.
Yeah, I think when they do some of the physiological profiles, there's, before you get into that zone, flow, those states that we talk about at the higher end, is you got to pass through this fun engagement type labeled zone, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, without doubt. And also, if you're a child who's on a sort of steady improvement, steadily improving throughout the years, then all of a sudden you start hitting some setbacks and some roadblocks along the way, then if there isn't that fun element attached to it, then it can become like very, very stressful, and you'll see them then just quitting the sport pretty quickly for that reason. Yeah,
I think that in youth sports, I think that's some of the greatest competition is other people are selling some other ideas of fun. Whether it's a game or the internet or YouTube, I don't know, but there's finding fun as a coach and discovering that is key for sure. One last one I want to talk about on here, I think definitely stuck out that I like. It kind of goes with being, having that intention of what you're doing, having that, not just going through the motions, but why do you say have two objectives to try to accomplish during practice? How can that help us just to?
Okay, right. So if you rock up to a training session, or you're training 3-4 times a week or more, and it's right, okay, it's Tuesday. Great. Yeah, training's on. With the intention of giving it your all, then fine. But realistically, you might be operating at 85%, 90% of your capacity. I think by simply having a goal and understanding why you're there can then elevate that 85, 90% to 100%, so you're fully efficient. So if I'm going to rewind back about 25 minutes when I talked about the interpersonal confidence bit. So if I was a player in a team sport, and that was one of the challenges that I had in in a match or in a training session was like maybe being vocal was one of the things. That could be a process goal I could set myself before a training session, where I'm going to rate myself. So on a scale of 1 to 10 in this training session, I'm going to rate myself how vocal I am, how much I'm going to instruct my teammates or encourage my teammates, how I assert myself when I'm criticized. And then again, we're getting into the whole thing about measuring, but you can measure your behavior there, and it just really, drills you and focuses you in on what it is that you need to do to achieve your longer term goals.
Yeah, no doubt. Last question, one we like to ask our guests. How do you define success?
How do you define success? It's very individual. In sport, I suppose most people, if you ask them that question, they would say it's about winning. But the reality is, it's very, it's very different. Success, I suppose, in my role could be helping them take a day off, 2 days off. Actually, taking a holiday.
Yeah, sure.
Getting away from the sport.
Yeah.
Success might be, we talked a lot about goals. Getting very clear on what their why is in order to help their motivation through the tough times. It might be having another pastime, so they're able to switch off on a day-to-day basis. It's going to be very, very individual, depending on the person who's in front of you.
Yeah. Love it. David, thank you so much for joining us, coming on the podcast, and appreciate all your insights and sharing what you did. And maybe someday you can come and hypnotize me and work on some stuff.
You're dancing.
Yeah, it still needs work. Ask my wife, still needs work. So no doubt.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking me on the show. I've really enjoyed it. And I hope the listeners have found some of the insights helpful.
Thank you for tuning in and all the way to the end. Appreciate that. If something this episode caught your ear, is useful or unique, I would love if you would share it, or, a thumbs up is always encouraging as well. If you want to come back and check out more videos, smash that subscribe button, ring that bell for notifications, and we'd love to have you back. Have a great day, and go elevate others.